I've been working on this jig that was going to make to line up the neck. It was a real pain because you need a very thin line. I tried using some thread on here. It was just becoming a real pain to do. And then I remembered that I've got a laser. Haven't used this in a long time, but I thought this might be a good, I don't know if you'll be able to see it or not, but nah, it's not picking it up. Oh, there you go. So I aligned it perfectly with the trough, and you can see the laser line comes down to the end here. And basically I marked my center right here, so it's a little off. I'm going to have to take off a little bit of material from this side and get the neck to adjust back this way to bring the line back towards me. Alright, so how are we going to do this? Well, I'm going to do this by putting the neck back on and taking a strip of sandpaper here and just basically pulling it down on the side that I've got to take the material off so that the neck's going to come this way. Alright, this template wasn't an epic fail after all, because I was able to just see if that was getting close or not when I was using the sandpaper here on the neck. Now I've got the laser back on. I took 8 pulls on the one side with the sandpaper, and it definitely made a change. We're much closer to my center line. I would say another maybe 3 to 4 pulls should get us right on that center line dot right there. Okay, so far fitting this neck has actually been one of the toughest parts of making this guitar. It just it was a long process, tedious process to try and get the center line of the neck, that where the truss rod went, and get that to line up with my center line on the guitar. I drew a center line here to make it easier to see it. I used that laser, it made the process a little easier, but I probably took the neck on and off, I would say a good half a dozen to 8 times, and just kept kind of working the sandpaper and slowly getting the angle to the point that it finally matched the center line. So now what I'm doing, I've got a pre-made saddle here. I'm not going to use this, I'm using this as a template, but I've got a bunch of blanks, so we're going to use this and copy that saddle. But just for this purpose, I just kind of want to see how things were looking. This is our fingerboard. Haven't cut it to the size of the taper of the neck yet, but I do have a center line on here. It's going to meet at the 14th fret. I've got that marked right here. Put a little X, so it's right where the body, would meet the 14th fret. And just for the heck of it, to see how the action is going to be now, I've got the straight edge here. If we put that on the center line, you can see it just goes over the bridge just a hair, slightly, and I think that's going to be very good. The reason being is, number one, the saddle's not all the way down because it's flat and there's a radius, so it's a little high. And we've still got to radius the fingerboard, so this needs to be sanded. But just looking at things, it looks like everything's lining up alright. And I did check with the fingerboard off. I took the straight edge and checked the for our 330 seconds down here, and we still had that action even after sanding it so that it would line up with the center line. So it looks like we're good to go. Alright, I'm going to cut the fretboard to those lines that we put on. Kind of got off to a slow start because the pencil lines were very hard to see. I kept losing them in the shadows. So I went back and put a little bit of white grease pencil on the outside. That just made it easier to make sure that I left the pencil line. So I've still got my lines, and I'm going to go over to the sanding board here and bring them down. Bring it down to the lines here. I just go back and forth like this till I meet those lines. That wasn't too bad. I worked at it mostly on the 80 until I got close, and then took it over to the 120. So this is down to 120 on the sides, and it measures pretty good now. I've got the nut. It's 1.779, and it's 1.785. Put it on the plans, and if these plans are to scale and accurate, which they're supposed to be, this is perfect. Fits perfectly on here. When I slotted the fretboard, the first slot here is actually the nut, so that's a good reference point. That's where the nut's going to touch this, so I've got to take that off of there. And I'll use that as a guide with my Japanese saw here and just go all the way through. Alright, that worked out nice. That came off nice and square. I just went over to double check the plans because they list the distance of each fret from the nut. And the first fret is 1.422. So I set my calipers, and it's exactly where it's at, so that's good. Alright, before I glue the fretboard to the fingerboard or the neck, I've got to I'm going to inlay it first. And I brought some diamonds to kind of match the original herringbone martin, these little guys here. So I've got to find where they're going to go on the neck position wise. I'll follow the schematic here. They've got one on the, let's see, the 5th, 7th, 12th, 9th, you know, and there's a large diamond, and then there's small diamonds, and they go in various positions. So I've already got my center line on, so from that center line that'll be fine except for the 12th fret. We'll have to divide that out and find out where these two go on the 12th fret. But I've got the center line, so now I've also got to get the center line vertical. I've got it horizontal, we've got to get it vertical. So I'm going to work on doing that right now. Just finding the center using the center rule here. Alright, so I've got the 5th, 7th, 9th, 12th, and what's that, 15th marked out. To find out where the little diamonds are going on the 12th fret, I took my calipers and I just measured them in from the ends. And so all we'll do is, see, this is 12 here. Let's make a little mark. I've got all the pieces out, and what I'm going to do, I've got some tight bond here. Just going to put a little drop of tight bond on the back of the inlay here. Just work on getting it centered. These are really little. Actually, this guy here is the bigger of the two. You want to drink a lot of coffee before you do this. Okay. I'm using tight bond because it will put the other ones on, and if I have to adjust it, it'll still be wet enough I can come back and still move them. But basically what we got to do is let it dry, and then I can use the this carbide tip, all that I've got, and trace around the inlay, and that's where I'll route out. So I'm going to put all the rest of them on now, and we'll see how that looks. Okay, there they are. And just visually it looks pretty well laid out. So I just have to let these dry now, and then I can come down and they'll hold tight. I'll be able to scribe around them and then knock them off with a razor blade or something thin like my scraper. While we're letting the fretboard inlay dry over there, I was looking at the truss rod here, because we can work on getting this installed there pretty soon. The barrel that's down at the end is a little bit wider than the trough that was routed out. So I've got to open this up a little bit, and I thought I'd just do that with a chisel here. I'm just going to slowly work on that a little bit on both sides and get that a little bit wider. The barrel now fits in the neck here, and the truss rod's here. What I did is I tightened the truss rod, and you can see how it's bending down. It's got to curve down, and that's what you want. As you tighten the truss rod, you want to put you want to fight the string tension. So basically the truss rod's trying to push the neck down, the strings are trying to pull the neck up. So as you tighten it, that's the correct way the rod should look. We need to route the channel for the truss right down here just a little bit deeper. We're going to remove a little bit of the spruce top here where the neck block is. Just take this spruce out here. Here's a close-up of what I had to do. What happened is, without having the channel cut deep enough, I was experimenting, putting the Allen wrench in here just to see if I could get the truss rod, and what happened, it kept banging into the neck block here. So we had to make that a little bit deeper so that, see, now it can access the barrel, the hex nut on the truss rod. Alright, back to the fretboard. The glue's dried enough. It's been maybe half an hour or so. What I'm doing is I'm just tracing around the inlay here with the scribe. And then see if we can slide this. To get a razor, here's a razor blade. There we go. And I can see a nice, oh, let's see, we've got a real close up here. There's a very good diamond pattern that I can see pretty well, and I'll be able to route around that. So I'll do each of the other ones. And what I'll have to do, I'll make sure that I keep these inlays in the same order, just in case there's a variation between like the two big ones or the smaller guys. I scraped around all the inlays and popped them off, and then I took my mechanical pencil and I followed the borders and just kind of colored in the middle to make them a little easier to see. You can see when the light hits those, it should be a little easier to figure out where we've got a route. Okay, here we go. I think I got a pretty good depth on here. Alright, that one's not quite in yet. And I've got this very, very fine chisel that I've been squaring up the edges with. And it looks like it's this edge right here that's kind of holding me up just a little bit. You just gotta, finding you just gotta take it slow. Getting there. Man, watch where you point this thing. Got myself. These little chisels, you kind of forget about them as you're holding them. I'm just holding it and just stuck myself. Anyway, I got this fitting good. It's a little proud, so I was just going to try and get it out here and just make sure the bottom of the cutout is flat. So I'm going to work on getting that out. It's in there good. There, I got it. So I'm just kind of running the bottom of the chisel around the bottom of the inlay cutout here and just making sure I get all the little shavings and stuff out. Alright, that's one down. Pretty happy with that. That's all I'm going to do today, because this is pretty tedious and I don't want to make a mistake by, I'm getting a little tired.
So I don't want to screw up my fretboard. That one fits perfect. And you know what I think I'm going to do too? I know you can get a black cyano glue. I was going to put these in with just the thin super glue and then sand it while it was wet and get the ebony to fill in. That would probably work fine, but I've got to order some stuff anyway, so I think I'll order some of that black cyano glue and try that to see if it works. And if you know, try this one. If I like it, I'll do all the rest with it. If not, then I'll just do the thin and sand it as it's wet.